Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
All right, so let's get to our play-by-play call of the day. A former Hershey Bear scores against the Penguins.
Penguins successful on the PK. Threatening now is Oshie, centering pass. Brana shoots and scores. Jacob Brana, and the Washington Capitals have a 2-0 lead.
And Steve Mears with the call on the Penguins TV network. Today's show brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Lincoln, Kia, Hyundai. Large selection of pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. It's all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Very quickly, I just want to step aside from sports for a moment and get it into the realm of the broadcasting world. I think most of you do know that Rush Limbaugh passed away today at the age of 70. Tomorrow, I'm sure Mark will get into the politics of it. I won't. But I will get into the communicator of Rush Limbaugh. To go on the air 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, and to just go and never stumble and never say and never say and put together full thoughts. Now, they may not be thoughts you agree with. They may be thoughts that you do agree with. That doesn't matter in this discussion at the moment. I'm talking about the incredible skill as a communicator that he had. Absolutely remarkable to do that 15 hours a week when some people run out of gas speaking after 15 minutes. And that is what I admired most in this business, was his ability to just keep going and not say or stumble or fumble around and try to figure out where he was going and what he was doing with it. He always seemed to know what he wanted to do with it, plus he had an entertainment factor to him. The politics part, I'll leave that to you and the rest of you as to whether you agree with him or disagree with him. But as a person in this medium, he was a phenomenal on-air performer. And he made it seem easy to do when it's difficult to do. And he passed away today at the age of 70. He just turned 70 last month, but he did not want the show to go by without recognizing that happened. As for the politics of it, you can debate that tomorrow with Mark on his show and On the Mark. All right. So here we are in the sports world, where we've talked about a wide variety of topics so far today. And one of them going forward is going to be, when can we start getting a true influx of fans in? Because it's not going to just change how a ballpark, a stadium, or an arena looks and feels. It's also going to change, I think, how we feel about it on television. A full link an incomplete pass, the booing. Oh, I'm sorry. These are your people. These are your people. These are your people.
You'll miss booing everywhere, not just Philly.
Some people have perfected it. All right. But, the atmosphere. Dallas is playing the Eagles. They're in the link. There's that anticipation. Something big is about to happen. Wells Fargo Arena, whether it's Villanova playing there, the Flyers, the Sixers. Now, this is one of the issues baseball has, by the way. And I think this is an issue that baseball does have. You notice how they've been piping in noise for events, and people know it. They've been critical of it. And as they pipe in the noise, it always is that constant din, right? That's baseball. That's what baseball sounds like until finally something happens. Baseball's at an interesting point. They are the sport that has gone the longest without a work stoppage, and the last one did incredible damage and, in some ways, in some quarters, irreparable damage in 1994. They've gone the longest since, yet they never regain the trust of the audience out there because people are always expecting them to go on strike for something. It's not true, but it sure is the perception, and perception's a problem. And this year they're headed toward the possibility of not having labor peace by the end of the year. It is the sport that can, the NHL and Major League Baseball are the two sports that can ill afford a work stoppage, with the NBA, believe it or not, next. And remember, the NFL had people upset when they missed 2 preseason games a couple of years ago. Remember that? People do not like to see millionaires versus billionaires when they're struggling to pay the mortgage and the car payment, or when they're struggling to pay off their student loan debt. They don't quite see, quote, their problems. All right, you have a problem with what here? How to divide up how much money? Really? But back to baseball. Baseball has tried various things to make it more exciting. Let's bring in the designated hitter. Let's have interleague play. I don't like the rule on the pitching where you got to face 3. I don't like that rule. But there are several things that baseball needs to do. Labor peace is one. They need that. So let's put that on the table right away. Labor peace is one. But they need to do several things to get themselves on track here. Number one, I don't expect them to take the pedal and push it to the floor, but you've got to have some pace to this thing. Oh, I like the leisurely pace. Okay, I don't want a hammock either. 1 foot in the box. Now you can look down to third. Okay? Adjust your batting gloves. I watched you on deck. You didn't adjust your batting gloves one time. So it can't be that much of an issue. Obviously, some sports psychologist told them that, hey, it just as your routine. Oh, the heck with your routine. Get in there and hit. Pitchers, get the ball, get the sign, pitch. And then the next one is, part of the analytics of the game deals with the shifts of the game. I think that maybe it is time, and I've gone back and forth on this, but I think now it's time that the shift has got to go. In other words, only 2 infielders on one side, 2 on the other side. Now, it doesn't mean you can't take your shortstop and put him behind second, but you can't cross the mythical line. Because the game is dominated too often by walks, strikeouts, and home runs. Part of the deal with the home runs is trying to get lift on the ball to lift the ball over the shift. That's why I think maybe it's time for the shift to go. It's not as if other sports don't have positioning rules. A goalie cannot skate down and join the play. In the NFL, 5 guys in the offensive line can't go out for a pass. Sports have positioning rules. Now, Major League Baseball has a positioning rule, too. A couple of positioning rules you didn't know. For example, the right fielder cannot line up in foul territory. Or left fielder, doesn't matter. No position player outside of the catcher can line up in foul territory outside of the catcher. If you do, it's a balk. So if you already have in play positional rules, you can then expand the positional rules and maybe get the lift out of there and get some base hits and get the ball in play and get rid of the ridiculous notion that those in sabermetrics always talk about these days, where a strikeout is like any other out. No, it is not. Only a complete novice and fool thinks that. And I deliberately put the second word in because I believe that. When you put the ball in play, you put the defense in peril. When you don't put the ball in play, the defense is not in peril. Runner on second, I strike out, 2 outs. Runner on second, I ground out to second base. He moves to third. Guess what? Wild pitch, pass ball, he scores. I thought you just told me strikeout's like any other out. Really? Well, he just made an out and we got a run out of it. It can't be. The analytics guys said, yes, exactly. I think it's something that needs to be considered.
I would be okay with no more shift. I just think it's kind of takes the air out of the balloon of an at-bat. Because you think someone's got a blue base hit or everything like that, and
I agree.
I haven't been the biggest fan of that, but I get why managers like to use it. Because you have to make sure that the hitter can, that. And also, too, guys don't know how to hit opposite. Some guys just don't know how to do that. They just want to pull the ball, and then you try and get it out that way. I get that strategy part of it, but I think that's minuscule compared to other things you need to do to win a game.
I think that what has happened is, first of all, managers are using it because they're allowed to, so they're smart. And they have all sorts of charts as to where you hit the ball. They have that. That's part of the game. That's part of the information that's needed to make good decisions. But I think there's certain, for example, in sports, the rules are tailored toward offensive play. Even though 5 guys in the offensive line cannot go out for a pass in a normal formation, obviously. You have to report eligible, which is a possibility. But normally, 5 guys can't go out that are playing on the offensive line. All right, well, that's a positional rule. Where you line up, you can't cover up a guy on the outside. That's a positional rule. In basketball, you throw the ball into the backcourt, guess what? It's a turnover. Technically, that's a positional rule. Just like there used to be no shot clock in college basketball, that went to 45, that went to 35, now 30. And a change in the shot clock to 20 on an offensive rebound. Just trying to keep the game moving. Well, guess what? I think baseball needs to do that. One of the better things that ever happened in the NHL and hockey is they took out the penalty for a 2-line pass. And stretch pass is a fun thing. It's a marvelous thing. In hockey. Yeah, you're not getting 8-7 games, but it sure does seem like the game is moving even when it's a 3-2, 4-3 game. Baseball needs to get moving, not at breakneck speed. 1 foot in the box when you look down to third. Get back in the box and hit. Pitcher, get the ball, get a sign. If you want to shake it off, great, fine. Okay, then pitch. And positionally, when it comes to what you're doing out there, no shifting. No 3 infielders on one side of the bag. I think you have to do things like that to get the game in gear, because the game needs more action. It's not going to be sustained action, but you have to transition the game away from either a walk, a strikeout, or a home run. Because there are too many dead periods in the game. You go today, time in today's game was 3 hours and 10 minutes. Do you know how often the ball was in play? 8 minutes on the average. 8 minutes, maybe creeping toward 9. Now, you're not going to get the ball in play for a half an hour. That's not going to happen. But you have to have the perception that it's happening out there, that there's some movement out there. Games used to be one of the items that really hurt baseball, I thought, was that during the pandemic when they weren't playing, MLB Network showed some of the great games of the past. And they'd show the entire game. And the entire game was 2 hours and 20 minutes. You look at the pitcher, Sandy Koufax, get the ball and pitch. Jim Cott, get the ball back, pitched. Dean Chance, got the ball back, pitched. Don Drysdale, got the ball back, pitched. Guy swung, put the ball in play. Didn't mean guys didn't strike out. Koufax 1 year struck out 382 batters one season. Didn't mean guys didn't walk. Koufax walked a fair amount early in his career. But you felt like the game was moving and had some variety to it. Right now, it's all launch angle and things like that. And believe me, analytics and sabermetrics, with all due respect to people who are working, who, by the way, have engaged some people in it, which is great, and information's invaluable. I'm all for more information, always all for more information. But they're also but by dictating the entire game around it, there are various ways to win. Sabermetrics, analytics tell you there's one game to win, one way to win. And you know what analytics and sabermetrics happen to be? Past information that you're trying to apply to today. There are various ways to win in every sport. The problem with people who are really buried to analytics and sabermetrics is they get mad when you don't use their method because they feel it's the only method. And that's turning some people off to the game. I don't want that. We'll come back with more in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK. When it comes to car buying, there's the other guy's way, and then there's the SMC way. The other guys force you into a vehicle you really don't want. The Sunbury Motors way lets you take the time you need to browse, ask questions, and take the test drive and think on it. For over 100 years, the Mertz family and all their employees have made your experience the most pleasant one you'll ever have. The other guys won't offer you the best price for your trade, no matter how much they say they will. The SMC way is their promise to provide you with the most money the market shows your vehicle is worth. The SMC way is to offer you all applicable factory rebates on new vehicles and generous discounts. Looking for a pre-owned vehicle? The SMC way checks each vehicle in a 200-mile radius to determine the lowest price, then beat it. It's the lowest price promise, just part of the SMC way. The choice is up to you. The other guy's way or the SMC way. The SMC way wins every time. Sunbury Motors Company in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburymotors.com. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for over 100 years. So you have women's basketball tonight?
I had girls basketball last night.
How'd it go?
It was a very interesting game. It was a very bizarre game in general. Ugly ending, or ugly game, a bizarre ending. Ending in overtime with a win for Lewisburg over Shabokin on the road. Lewisburg got down 12-0 in the game. Came back in forced overtime, won it in overtime on a lane violation by the Shabokin shooter of a free throw that would have tied the game and sent it to double overtime.
Wow. When's the next Shikellamy game?
Scheduled for tomorrow, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, Dave Ritchie will probably do as much talking tonight as he will tomorrow night. All right. Scott Lauber on the Phillies spring training. Next half hour on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Brought to you by Sunbury Motors.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Lincoln, Kia, Hyundai. Fabulous new inventory. Large selection of pre-owned inventory. All at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. All right, snow is in the forecast, so let's talk baseball. Scott Lauber joins us from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Welcome back. Great to have you with us. Well, when we had the Pirates guest on, I felt like he was guessing at most of the names. Okay. All right. You don't have to do that. So when you look at the foundation of the Phillies, where are they foundationally as a team to start this spring training?
Yeah, no, you're right. For a team that, finished under 500 last year and missed the playoffs in an expanded field, they have a pretty settled roster. You know, they brought the band back, so to speak, and their wager here is that they are a better team than they were in a very short sample size last year. That 60 games was not real revealing of a whole lot, other than that their bullpen was atrocious and it really wrecked their season. So they've tried to build a little bit better bullpen. They've tried to add some pitching depth that they know they're going to need as pitchers try to get back to throwing a full season's worth of innings. But really what they did was, their two biggest off-season expenditures were to bring back JT Realmuto and Didi Gregorius, and they feel like they've returned kind of the core of their team, and now it's just a matter of being a better overall roster, being deeper and stronger, especially in their pitching staff. And time will tell if they've succeeded in doing that. But they like where they stand, and health, barring any health issues in spring training, they are probably 22 or 23 roster spots of the 26 are basically accounted for.
That's amazing. When you look at a guy like Bryce Harper, where does he need to be better? Look, I know there's the pressure of the contract, but there's a reason he got the contract. So when you watch him on an everyday basis, then the days he's right, what is he doing compared to what he's not doing?
It's a great question, Steve. And look, I'm someone who believes he's had two really good years for the Phillies. I have a hard time looking at his body of work these last 2 years and finding a lot of fault with it. It feels a little nitpicky almost, given what he's been able to do. I think if there was anything you point to, it's the consistency. Look, he had a stretch last year from the first game of the season, I would say for about the first month or so, where he carried that offense. I mean, he was having as good a stretch as he's ever had in his career. And then he really went through kind of a rough patch. We now know that he was dealing with a back injury that he was playing through that had limited him. That happens during the year, especially when you play as hard as he does. You know, he doesn't really sort of, you know, he's got one speed. And so guys like that do tend to get banged up during the course of the year. I would just say that, look, you know, over the course of the 2 years, you say when he's right and when he's good, he's one of those guys who can carry an offense at the plate, and when he's not, he needs help around him. You'd like a little bit more consistency, but really, I mean, honestly, you know, I think they would take what he's done the last couple of years and they'd sign up for that second and take it again and for the next 10 years.
So we take a guy that is a superstar in the game, and you need your superstars to perform well to win. But then you have other people that, when they play well, they're a reason why you win. To me, one of those guys to me is Didi Gregorius. How important was it, in your opinion, that they got him back on the roster?
I think it was important for a few reasons. Like he's a left-handed hitter, and without him, you know, their lineup would tilt very much to the right. I mean, Harper is a left-handed hitter, but really when you look at Alec Boehm, Rhys Hoskins, J.T. Realmuto, Andrew McCutchen, all right-handed hitters. Gene Segura, right-handed hitter. So they needed another left-handed hitter in the lineup. I think Gregorius' defense is better than the metrics show. You know, he's probably not where he was a few years ago with the Yankees prior to his elbow surgery. But, you know, the metrics were not kind to him last year. I watched, you know, the large majority of their games, and I didn't find that he was a liability defensively. Now he's 31, and so I don't think his defense is going to get better at this point. It's probably going to erode a little bit, but I think he still plays a good enough shortstop. What's interesting to me is they looked around before they re-signed him. They looked really hard at Andrelton Simmons, who was on the free agent market. He wound up signing a one-year deal with the Twins. Simmons is not as good an all-around player as Gregorius, but his defense is considerably better. And it tells you the Phillies do have some concerns about their overall defense. They were not a very good defensive team last year. And so while I just said his defense, Gregorius' defense, to me is not a problem, there are better defensive shortstops out there, and they looked at one in Simmons. Ultimately, he went somewhere else. They decided to sign Didi Gregorius to a 2-year deal, and I think for a couple of years they still have a very, very good shortstop on both sides of the ball, and a guy who maybe can be the bridge that they're looking for to Bryson Stott, who's their top prospect and their first-round pick 2 years ago, and a guy that they're hoping in 2022, 2023 can be their everyday guy there.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I saw Stott, and when I was in broadcasting State College Williamsport games, fabulous-looking prospect, no getting around it.
And the other thing I should note about Gregorius is, Joe Girardi knows him very well, was with him with the Yankees, and the one thing you hear, the one thing we miss with the virus and not being able to be in the clubhouse every day is seeing some of that interaction. But what you hear from players, what you hear from Girardi, is that Gregorius is just a good clubhouse guy and someone that is important to have around. He's a winning player. He's been to the playoffs before. I think the more Phillies players that have been to the playoffs before, there's a team that hasn't been there in 9 years. And so you've got homegrown players like Rhys Hoskins and Aaron Nola who've been around and they're established, but they don't know what that's all about. I think you need guys like Gregorius who know what it takes to get there and can show them, can kind of be leaders in that way.
How does the 5-man rotation set up?
Well, the top three are easy. It's Nola, Wheeler, and Zach Eflin. That's 1, 2, 3. And, again, something would have to happen in spring training for them to not start the first 3 games of the season. After that, you're going to have some competition. Matt Moore and Chase Anderson are veteran guys who came in on major league contracts who have the opportunity here to win the 4th and 5th starter jobs. I would say they're probably the 2 favorites at this point. Vince Velasquez, also a veteran guy, has been here for a few years, is in the mix. I think he also has experience pitching out of the bullpen. So they could look at him as a potential swingman, guy who can give them some starts, give them some innings out of the bullpen. The real X factor in all of this is Spencer Howard. We know how touted he is. We know how highly they think of him. He also pitched 24 innings last year, and he's had shoulder issues the last 2 years. So they're going to be careful with him. They're going to monitor him. They know that they want him to pitch important innings this year. They just don't know exactly how many innings he's going to be able to pitch. So I don't think they're putting they're certainly not going to tell us that they're putting a hard cap on him at 100 innings or whatever it is. But look, honestly, he had injury issues the year before. He didn't pitch much last year because of injuries and the pandemic. So realistically, if he could give them 100 innings, I think they'd take that. And, look, the other thing, too, is that they haven't come right out and said that they're going to use a six-man rotation at points this year. But I've been told that that's something they've talked about internally. And, the reason being, as I said earlier, you're trying to condition pitchers back to a full season's worth of innings after they pitched a third of a season last year. So it's possible you're going to need six guys in a rotation a few times through to kind of keep guys from being overworked or whatnot. And I think the more arms you can have, the better. So, I think Moore and Anderson might have the inside track right from opening day on spots 4 and 5, but you're going to need Velasquez. You're going to need Howard. I think you're going to need Ivan Nova, who they signed to a minor league deal. You're going to need as many of these guys as you can to kind of get through the season.
It's interesting you talked about getting through the season. Also, something's going to happen, Scott, that hasn't happened in, 18 months? Because they couldn't reach an agreement because of the linkage between the playoffs and the DH, you're going to have pitchers hitting that they haven't hit in 18 months. How do you view that? Well,
look, I think I've talked to a few pitchers about it, and I think they're a little bit concerned, understandably. There's enough to worry about in terms of staying healthy from keeping your arm healthy standpoint. Now you put having to hit back into the mix. None of them have hit in the last year plus. You're going to have, oblique injuries. You're going to have issues that come up with just a swing or a guy trying to run the bases when he hasn't run the bases in over a year. So I think that there are some pitchers who think that, it's a bit of a health concern. There's also the issue of, I think most people think that in the next CBA, there's going to be a universal DH. So they could be doing this again and doing it only for one more year. So I think it's a thorny issue. I think it's a little problematic. I think that I'm not there yet where I'm ready to say for sure that they're not going to have the DH in the National League. I think that there's still time for baseball and for the Players Association to work some things out, whether it's a universal DH, expanded playoffs. Last year, expanded playoffs happened on the day before the season started. So they could go almost right up until the end. I don't think it looks great for it to happen, but, there's always the possibility that, they could look at this and go, what are we doing? This is a health issue. We don't want pitchers to have to do this unnecessarily. Let's put the DH in.
I felt in recent years that the trickiest part of any ball club is that 6th, 7th, 8th inning, the guys that pitch in there, because I think you're always hoping to hit lightning in a bottle where a couple of guys have that, quote, career year. So who do you look at in those roles in that Philly bullpen, Scott, that you think have a shot to give them something there that can make them better?
Well, the two guys who are locks are Archie Bradley and Hector Neris. So I'll leave them out of it because, they both have track records to some degree as late-inning guys. Say what you want about Neris, but, he has closed for them, and he has had really good stretches for them. I know he's not the most consistent guy in the world, and sometimes he puts guys on base, and it makes it look harder than it is and gives people a little bit of heart palpitations there. But he's done it. So I'm going to leave the two of them out. I'm going to say that they're relative certainties. You kind of know what you've got. I think that there are other guys. Connor Brogdon is a name that I'm going to be looking at a lot in spring training. He had a really good finish to last season. but he's still a rookie, and he's still a guy who's kind of light on experience. Is he more the guy that you got in September when he was lights out, or the guy who struggled when he came to the big leagues the first time in August and had to go back to the alternate site? Brogdon, JoJo Romero falls into that category of a young guy with potential who had his moments last year. If they can give you the better version of themselves, then all of a sudden you're looking at two guys who could be key pieces to the bullpen. And we're also looking at, guys, they've signed a few guys to minor league deals. Brandon Kinsler, Tony Watson today agreed to a minor league deal.
Okay.
Hector Rondon, who've had, track records in the big leagues, who are going to have a chance to make the team as non-roster invitees. Kinsler had a really good year last year with the Marlins. There's a guy who I think could come in and pitch the 7th or 8th inning for you and do a nice job. So, whether those guys emerge and win spots in the bullpen, I've described the Phillies bullpen as kind of a land of opportunity this spring, and I think that there's going to be a chance for a lot of different guys, younger guys, more experienced guys, to win some of those seats in that bullpen.
Tony Watson started his career here in State College professionally.
That's right.
Oh,
right.
Okay. In fact, first outing there at Williamsport, 5 2/3 no-hit innings. I thought, this guy's got a shot.
Is that right?
Yeah. First time out, though. Then, of course, they had to take him out because there's only X amount of pitches you can throw at this level. So,
of course.
Scott, always a pleasure. Really appreciate the time you give us.
You bet, Steve. Anytime.
Scott Lauber joining us on the Philadelphia Inquirer. It wasn't a Yankee conversation, thus I know you have complaints. We'll come back with more in a moment. Seem to have a lot of complaints lately.
Hey, I get my DD fix with him, so I'm good, actually.
With the guy you dumped? All right. We'll come back with more in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Carson Wentz still an Eagle. Went through an entire show. Nothing. Just thought we'd throw that in there for you.
Yep.
2,282 COVID-19 tests for Penn State, 16 positives. Okay. That's the latest numbers put out today. All right. So we thought we'd throw that in there for you along the way. Our thanks to, it's always great talking baseball with Scott. He's terrific. Does a great job covering the Phillies, great insight, perspective, which is obviously what we're looking for here. Got a lot going on tomorrow. Not only the show, but then after that, the coaches show. Well, you got you said Shikellamy basketball. That's not going to be played tomorrow, probably.
Yeah, most likely not.
Which means you'd carry Penn State, Ohio State, right?
Yes, I believe that is the plan. That is
right,
the plan B, I should say.
Yes. Well, plan A for me is I have to do the coaches show from 6:05 to 7, and then drive over and be there at 7:30 to get the game going. So that is tomorrow. Ohio State is right now on the one line. The NCAA selection committee a couple of years ago started putting out what their top 16 have to be, top 4 in each region. And when they put it out this time, it was Baylor, Gonzaga, as expected, Michigan, and Ohio State on that one line. Ohio State is here tomorrow night at 8 and on beginning at 7:30. So I'll do this, get the show done, then do the next show from 6:05 to 7, and then get in the car, drive over, make sure I'm there by 7:30. If Dick Girardi's opening it, that means I didn't get there in time. I think I'll make it. It's not that far. It's not that far. So, all good. And another key for us is that I won't have to listen during that entire time about Carson Wentz. All right.
True.
Look, it's you become entertaining.
I guess I'll take that as a compliment.
Absolutely. Oh, you should definitely take that as a compliment. You know? Like, look at the suit. Right? Entertaining.
Yeah, also true.
At times, very entertaining. And most of the time, by accident. Another show where today we didn't talk about the Indy 500. Great to have you with us. Today's show has been brought to you by our great friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Stay tuned here for the latest in weather and if there are any closings, delays, or cancellations here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.